Do you ever feel like you're missing out on investing? And whenever you do enter the stock market, it feels just like this? Sucks, doesn't it? Well, today in this video, we're going to talk about 4 fund categories that make this complicated mess a little bit more easy. And what is really cool is if you stick to $500 a month invested every single month, you could grow your investment portfolio to $1,200,000, which you're gonna see as we go through today's video. Now this 4 fund portfolio, it has some requirements. Requirement number 1, it has to be at least a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund, ETF. No single stocks. Now, of course, single stocks can go up to the moon very, very quickly, but there's also a lot of cases where the single stocks drop down significantly. And if you're getting close to retirement, that could be a huge problem for your portfolio. Number 2 requirement, these funds must have an expense ratio that is equal to or less than 0.30%. And number 3, all of these funds should at least pay a dividend, because dividends are awesome. Now, in fact, I've already started investing in what we're going to explore today, and so far I have grown my portfolio to $20,000. Now for me, I have these 4 funds, and in these 4 funds, I invest 25% of my $500 every single month. I only use ETFs because that's just easier for me, and I tend to like ETFs versus mutual funds. Now, of course, none of this is financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. You need to do your own research. After all, I'm just some guy on YouTube who sometimes looks like Woody from Toy Story. Do your own research. Let's start off with the very first fund category, and that is growth and income. Now, growth and income, that means you're looking for a conservative fund that grows at a minimum of about 10% on average every single year. The income part of growth and income means that it pays a very good dividend percentage. Like to be amazing for like 3% or more in dividends. Now, for my category specifically, I use the fund SCHD. This is Schwab's US Dividend Equity ETF. Now, as you can see right here on Seeking Alpha, they have a dividend yield of 3.27% with an annual payout of $2.43. Every quarter, they pay a dividend. In fact, the last payout date for the last quarter so far as of the recording of this video was on June 27th for the total of 70 cents per share that you owned paid into your account. Even better yet is that the fund has returned a total of 156% in growth over the last 10 years. Now, this fund holds what we call a lot of dividend aristocrats and dividend kings. These are consistent companies that have either raised or maintained their dividend for a set period of time. You're going to find companies in the holdings of SCHD such as PepsiCo, the Home Depot, Pfizer, and other very stable companies in this particular fund. The fund has an expense ratio of only 0.06%, which does meet requirement number 2, and it has a very handsome dividend, which of course meets requirement number 3. Let's move on to the next fund category. The second fund category is the growth category. This one, we're more focused on overall growth and not so much growth plus a dividend. The goal here is to balance your growth and income fund with something that will grow a little bit stronger over the years ahead. A lot of people like to look for funds in the S&P 500 index, such as a VOO or SPY, or a fund that invests in the entire stock market. For this category in particular, I chose VTI, which is Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index. This fund invests in the entire United States stock market. If the stock market's up, VTI is up. The stock market's down, VTI is down. Now take a look at this. Over the last 10 years, VTI has returned a total of 175%, 2012 to 2022. The holdings of VTI include over 4,000 stocks, making up the US stock market, and most of the top holdings are going to be in the best companies by market cap, such as Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, and Google. And of course, for requirement number 2, it does have a very nice expense ratio of only 0.03% and pays a dividend yield of 1.49%. And that brings us to fund category number 3. And fund category number 3 is what we call the wild child, the aggressive growth fund category. When the aggressive growth fund is up, oh, it's up and it's amazing. But when it's down, it hurts. Like, seriously hurts. And that's what makes the 4 fund category that we're talking about in today's video so much fun, because you have this particular fund that we're going to talk about, the aggressive growth fund, that goes wild and crazy, and then you have the balance of growth and income that keep things stable. That way, you're not putting all your eggs into one basket. In the case that the basket drops, you're not breaking all of your eggs. You're spreading them across all of these different ETFs, which makes it a nice fun ride. And we'll see the benefit of that in just a few moments. Now, an aggressive growth fund is one that you're going to want to do some additional research on. You're looking for things like technology, new innovation, or emerging trends. Things like that can make up a great aggressive growth. Now you can go as aggressive as you want or as calm as you want. But in order to maintain requirement number 2, which means that you have to have an expense ratio equal or less than 0.30%, it is very hard to find. A lot of times aggressive growth funds are very expensive, but I found one, and while it may not be extremely aggressive, it's aggressive enough for my taste. I opted for NASDAQ 100's QQQ fund for this particular category. This one tracks the NASDAQ 100 index and is very tech heavy, representing 47% of the portfolio invested into technology funds. The expense ratio clocks in at 0.20%, and while it does meet requirement number 2, this one is going to be the most expensive expense ratio in the group. And of course, what makes it fun for the aggressive fund category is in the last 10 years, this one here, up 343%. Now the dividend yield is the smallest of the bunch at 0.61%, but it does still pay a dividend, and I'll take it. The last and final fund, number 4, is international exposure. Yes, we're gonna look for an international fund. So the funds that we just discussed are primarily United States based, but we need to have exposure to the international market. So what you wanna do is look for funds that are interesting to you that focus primarily on international and or emerging markets. Now the fund I selected for my international portfolio is VXUS. It's Vanguard's international fund. And I gotta be honest, I'm not too thrilled with this fund, but this is the one I'm sticking with for now. The expense ratio is great at only 0.07% and a dividend yield of 3.86%. But the 10-year return is a small, measly 10.67% return, barely meeting the expectations for a good quality fund. This fund does span across 7,891 companies with top holdings in financial and industrial sectors. Any ex-US public equity market will be invested in this fund, which does make it a nice sister to VTI, which tracks the US total stock market, whereas this one will track the international stock market. Now here comes the fun part. Let's say we invested in these 4 funds, and I'll use my example as our primary go-to. If we would have invested $500 a month from December of 2011 until now, most recently as of the recording of this video, August of 2022, here's what we're looking at. I chose $500 a month because that represents the average car payment. Instead of going into debt for cars, maybe find a cheaper alternative where you don't have to spend so much every single month, and instead you can invest that money into the stock market. If we invest in QQQ, VTI, and SCHD for that period of time that we just mentioned, your $500 invested every month would grow to a total of $128,611. Now that's not really a bad start, but it gets even better. But before we get to that, let's talk about the Bogle 4 fund portfolio. A lot of people like to point to Bogle and his 4 fund portfolio as a very easy way to invest. Now, if we take the 4 fund categories that we're talking about in today's video and compare them specifically to the Bogle on the portfolio visualizer, check out what happens in that same period of time between December of 2011 and August of 2022. We grow a total of 12.57% in our portfolio, whereas the Bogle fund only grows by 8.54%. And it's a little bit less, and your $500 goes to $102,525 versus our fund at $128,000. I don't know about you, but I like the extra $20,000. The reason for that is that the Bogle fund does invest in bonds, whereas the funds that we review today do not invest in bonds. Now, if you want something even more conservative, you're a little bit worried, you don't want to jump in with 2 feet right into the water and only invest in equities in the stock market, you may want to consider something like the Bogle fund. So while we did grow at 12.57% over the last 10 years, I don't want to use that as my assumption for the future, only because 12% is a little bit more than typical. In fact, if you look over the last century, the stock market has returned on average 10% per year. So to be safe, let's take it as 10% growth and not 12% growth as we look ahead to the future. So what we're going to continue to do is keep our balance of $128,000 for the next 20 years, assuming a return rate of 10% as we just mentioned, and we're going to continue to contribute $500 at the end of every single month. Your balance could grow to a total of $1,220,249. Now, if you're just starting off and you have time on your side, this should get you super excited. I hope it does. Because if you do this right and stay consistent, I'm talking right now on this video to a future millionaire. But what if you decide instead of 4 funds, you're going to only invest in one particular fund in this portfolio? Well, let's say we invest in only QQQ. What you would want to do is, we're not talking about 1.2 million, but maybe over $3 million. And that is explored in this video right here, and I'll see you right over on that one.